Have you ever heard the saying, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink? Well, let me tell you, now more than ever, the universe is doing its very, very best to lead us, the said horses, to the water. But, you know, it's up to us to decide whether we're going to listen to the cues and be guided by the energies that are around and supportive and available to us at the moment, as to whether we're actually going to make the shifts that we are being invited and asked to do, you know, in this point in time. September was a crazy month energetically. Put your hand up if you felt it. I tell you what, for me, it definitely was one of the most intense energetic months that I have experienced in my living memory. And October is set to be in a different way, but October is set to be even more intense in many ways. You're probably aware, because I talk about it a bit and so do many others, and you've probably seen about the photonic light and the radiation that is arriving to us from our sun, these X-class and M-class solar flares. And it's no joke, and it's no there's no coincidences about this either. You know, these X and M-class flares didn't actually start until 2018. The X-class flares, we've seen more of them over the last few years than have ever been recorded. And this is measurable, just like you would measure an earthquake on a Richter scale. This frequency, this light is measurable. And what is it doing? It is arriving to us, bringing us information. We could call it codes. You hear it spoken about that a lot, and maybe that's like codes, that sounds so woo-woo, but it's codes. Like if you think of a computer program, ones and zeros, or, you know, the way that how do I say, there's so many different ways that you could think of this, but it's intelligent information. And the information that it carries specifically is designed to upgrade our operating systems, being our bodies, our emotional intelligence, our mind. And why? Because we are in an ascension process. And what does that mean? That means that we are changing, that the earth is changing, and that we are remembering our true nature as human beings that operate and live, and whose natural way of being is to live from the heart, right? From our feeling, from our ease, from our joy, from our grace, from our love, right? And that is very, very different to how we have been programmed in a false matrix. False matrix meaning that there has been kind of like an overlay or a sheath that has, in some ways, I guess, kept, well, not I guess, for sure, kept a lot of us, pretty much all of us, asleep. Meaning, what does it mean to be asleep? It means that, you know, you're asleep and you're dreaming, and while that's happening, that's what reality is for you, right? You think that you are the dream. You don't know that you're asleep until you wake up. You could have been having a beautiful dream, an intense dream, a nightmarish dream, but it's not until you wake up that you realize that that dream wasn't real, right? And that what you were experiencing in the dream wasn't true, right? Have you ever had that experience, right, where you're almost relieved when you wake up from that dream? So if we have not been operating in our fullest potential, if we have not been fully connected to our hearts and living a life of expansion, of freedom, of joy, of abundance, of ease, of peace on this planet, you know, when we see all of these natural disasters happening on the planet, this is also a massive wake-up call from our Mother Earth, from our Pachamama, who is going through her own ascension process, but she's really trying to get our attention. You know, when these things happen, as disastrous and devastating as they are, what is the result when these things happen? Unity, right? It brings us all together, which is, that's our true nature, is to work in harmony, in community, in cooperation with each other, right? So unfortunately, sometimes our Pachamama, the elements, the guardians of this earth, have to do things to make us wake up, to remember who we really are, because we're not getting it otherwise. We're not getting it quickly enough. But we are getting it. So what does that mean for us in this moment right now? We are, this process, you know, really since the year 2000, but on steroids since 2013, has been one of shedding, right? It has been a lot. We've been asked to look at a lot of stuff, to meet ourselves, to look at our limitations, our fears, our doubts, our outdated ways of doing things, and ancestral healing, and, you know, the shadow work and all of the stuff. The shadow work, by the way, doesn't mean hanging out in the light and ignoring the shadow. The shadow work means knowing that you are light, and that you go in like Luke Skywalker with his lightsaber, you know, and you shine your light upon those parts of ourselves that we call the shadow. So I won't go into that now because it's a different topic, but just to say that shadow work is light work, right? So now, as things get even more sort of intensified, it's kind of like the light is alchemizing and bringing anything to the surface to be held in that light, to be seen in that light. So anything that is not at that highest frequency of that light is going to feel off. It's going to feel sticky. It's going to feel hard. It's going to show up in physical illness or disease in the body, you know, and it can be on the physical level, the way that you are literally treating your physical temple, you know, with the food that you're ingesting, with the way that you move or don't move your body. It can be in the emotional realm, you know, the stories that we hold on to and the way that we allow ourselves to get swallowed up by the emotions. It can be in the mental realm, meaning the crazy busyness of the monkey mind and the way that it controls us through anxiety and giving us old stories about things, and creates and causes us to act and behave in certain ways that are very, very outdated, that we have been running for perhaps a lifetime, and that simply do not serve us anymore. Serve us anymore. It can be in the energetic being, where, or you know, in the spiritual context, where the old things that we did, we shared, we practiced, we taught, we thought, we believed, just don't fit. They just were being asked to completely empty that out. And how that can look is all of a sudden the things that you felt and held so dear and that you felt really worked for you just aren't cutting it anymore, and you're questioning, you know, you're questioning, why am I even doing this in the first place? So this is the time for it, and it's really kind of a little bit like the last hurrah in a way. And so the stuff is going to be coming up really, really in your face, thick and fast, and sometimes in ways that will floor you, because you're just like, oh my God, you know. And it's like, even the things, you know, even if you're at a point where you're like, no, I've done a lot of that work and I'm clear, then all of a sudden there's something about your newfound clarity that you're being challenged on, right? So it's really up to us to be willing to stalk ourselves in the way that the beautiful jaguar or the puma or these great cats stalk their prey, without judgment, right? No judgment, just watching and noticing gently, wow, okay, so getting down to the nuances even of where you, for example, if you're in overwhelm and stress, where are you not only creating that for yourself, but where are you not willing to step out of that because you think that everything will fall apart if it does, or perhaps you're even addicted to being in that switched on, anxious energy, because it's adrenaline and it's dopamine and it's addictive, and you have to discipline yourself to step back and step out, even if it's to sit still and quietly for 10 or 20 minutes a day, right? It's getting down to those nuances, and it's also some of the big things as well: jobs, relationships, as I said, diet, exercise, how we're treating the physical body. Because I tell you what, for us to be able to assimilate and integrate these light codes, the body needs to be pretty clean, right? And I'm not saying not to drink or not to, eat fried food or not to have carbs or whatever. I don't care. It's not about that. It's about getting really honest with yourself about the quality of what you're putting in, the oils, the kinds of oils that you're putting into the body, the refined carbohydrates. If you're having a drink, like, not too much, like it's really, and noticing the body's going to be showing us big time where we are holding things and where we need to make a change. I've had it in my back, in my lower right side and up the middle, which is very unusual for me, and a feeling of not being able to support myself or not feeling supported. Now this is a big one, because the one of the big themes for October is around power, right? So it's a shift in power, and it's either feeling powerful or powerless. Feeling powerful can be really positive, because if you're empowered, then that's a really positive thing. But if you're finding that you're exerting power over others, maybe being a bit bossy, that is an old paradigm way. It's a very much a 3D matrix way of being, whereas feeling empowered and powerful is really in that heart space, in that center, in that 5D center that we're moving towards. On the other end of that, powerless is feeling unsupported, is feeling overwhelmed, is feeling like you have no power to make change, is going into any kind of victim story at all. And then the flip side of that powerlessness is also being in a surrendered acceptance of what is. That's not about giving up, that's about not trying to push and force and control, and listening to when it's time for you to take a break. Like, if you're feeling powerless, if you're feeling like you can't support yourself, if you're feeling unsupported and overwhelmed, then the answer isn't to keep pushing forward, it's to empower yourself by stepping back, by coming into your center, and by allowing yourself to regroup, right? Getting back into your sovereignty, into your power. So there's so much that's going on. And that last thing about sovereignty there, that word just came through. We are continuing to become even more and more sovereign, meaning that as we wake up from that dream and we realize that in that dream we were told and fed a lot of things that simply aren't true, then there can be a sense of outrage or anger or disillusion or mistrust or whatever that comes as a result of that. So we need to watch that, because the outrage just puts us in a disempowered position. Actually being in outrage and going into that, projecting outwards is also a way that we give away our power, because we lose energy to that. So just notice where that arises in you, and perhaps what you can do is flip it and instead see it as a larger part of the bigger plan, the bigger picture, that all was perfect, that all has been unfolding exactly as it was meant to. And how freaking awesome is it that we are here and get to be a part of a very, very new world that is being birthed. You know, I feel that people of around my generation and a bit younger and a bit older, we really are the front runners that have been doing a lot of this stuff. These the kids that came through that were born after 2012, 2013, different, very, very different. I mean, you only got to look at what's happening with the tweens and the teenagers to see how different they are. They're a totally new human. So we've done and we are doing a lot of the work to clean up that old paradigm so that they can step in and claim the new earth in a really beautiful, positive and heart-centered way. I mean, back in the day when I started Naked Treaties, which was my real vegan restaurants and food distribution business, that was like back in 2009, and it was unheard of. It was so not anywhere close to mainstream. It was, I think I was one of the first in Australia. There was only a few of us that were doing that work back then, and now it's so normal for people to be vegan, especially the kids. They love it. Not that I'm advocating being vegan. I'm not vegan myself. These days I believe it more in balance. I don't eat meat, that's just a choice I make. But the consciousness of what we're putting into our bodies. Back then, it was 2007, where I was visited by a star elder being, actually an incredible, we'll just say that, a master of light. And he told me back then that this time was coming, and that my purpose of doing that business, because I didn't want to do it, it wasn't something that I loved doing it for my passion. I didn't want it to be a business. And he told me very clearly back then that it wasn't a choice, that it was necessary to be a part of this movement because there was a great change coming in the physical body. This is pre-2012. I didn't know what it meant back then. I had no clue what he was talking about, but I get it now. And he was talking about the body needing to be prepared to be able to receive the frequency of what was arriving to us, because it would be like nothing we've received before, and that some people just wouldn't be able to handle it and they would get very sick, maybe even die. So this was interesting for me. That I'm like, what? Okay then. So off I went and I did it, and now looking back I get it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that was all about. So the universe is leading us to water, but it can't make us drink. That's got to be up to us. And I just want to finish that by saying that applies to you and your loved ones too. So if you're on the path and you're on track and you're really looking after yourself and you're doing all of the things, to really stay centered, do the work, everything we've just been talking about, and then you have somebody in your family who isn't, or in a close relationship, a friend, perhaps a beloved who isn't, you can only ever lead by example, and you can only ever suggest when there's a worthy inquiry. If there's not, then we need to allow people to walk their own path and their own journey, and just like the universe does with us, right? The universe will show us, especially if we ask, but it's up to us to pick it up, and the universe won't force us, but we have to be willing and ready to say yes and to do it for ourselves. So remember that compassion, the same compassion that the universe has for us, to have that compassion for the people in your life that you love, that you just, tearing your hair out. You're like, for God's sake, come on, can't you see? But it's like, it's not up to you to point that out. It's up to them to realise that within themselves. And they will, in time. Okay, or not, and that's okay too. Alright, my loves, thanks for listening. I hope it's helpful, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye for now.